let's talk about a really insidious form of psychological manipulation. It's a tactic where someone doesn't just lie to you. They actually hold up a mirror that forces you to see their flaws, their shame, as if it was your own reflection. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this shame mirror works.
They accuse you of the very thing they are guilty of: lying, cheating, or rage. But why does their lie feel so devastatingly real? Well, this is the dark psychological paradox of what's called identity projection. It's a defense mechanism that literally forces the victim to carry the abuser's shame.
You know, that question really gets to the heart of the confusion, doesn't it? It's that dizzying, destabilizing feeling when reality just seems to flip completely upside down. You get accused of being angry by someone who is literally yelling at you, or you're called selfish while you're bending over backwards to meet their every demand. Look, this isn't just a simple disagreement. This is a direct assault on your perception of reality. It's designed to make you question your own sanity, and it's so effective because of that disorientation. It works because it attacks the very foundation of who you think you are, making you doubt the ground beneath your feet.
So, to really get a grip on this, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the paradox of accusation. Then we'll define exactly what identity projection is. After that, we'll dive into the three-stage mechanism they use and the opposing mindsets that make it all work. And then, the most important part, how to break the mirror. We'll finish with the empowering takeaway.
All right, part one, the paradox of accusation. This is all about that conflict between feeling and fact. This is where the whole emotional battle really kicks off, right in that gap between what you know is true and what you're being aggressively told is true.
And this right here is the heart of it. The accusation feels so intensely real, but factually, it's just false. This is that internal crash psychologists call cognitive dissonance. See, the manipulator isn't just making some casual claim. They're delivering it with this overwhelming conviction, this emotional force that makes it feel terrifyingly real. So your brain is thrown into chaos, trying to hold two opposite ideas at the same time. On one hand, you have your own truth, I'm not a dishonest person. And on the other, you have this aggressive certainty coming from them. Wow, this person I trust is 100% convinced I'm a liar. This mental tug of war, it's disorienting, it's exhausting, and that's exactly the point. The whole goal is to shatter your confidence and destabilize your reality.
Okay, so that leads us to the clinical term for this. This isn't just random gaslighting, it's a very specific defense mechanism. We're calling it the shame mirror, and it's basically a tactic for them to offload all their accountability.
So, officially, it's called identity projection. It's a defense mechanism where someone just displaces their own unacceptable flaws, their shame, their guilt, onto someone else. But here's the really crucial part. This isn't some brilliant conscious strategy they've cooked up. No, it's what psychologists call a primitive defense mechanism. For someone with strong narcissistic traits, facing one of their own flaws, like admitting they're insecure or wrong, it's not just uncomfortable, it is psychologically intolerable. It triggers something called a narcissistic injury, which is this profound threat to their fragile, inflated ego. And to avoid that feeling of collapse, their brain has this, like an emergency escape hatch. It instantly, and usually unconsciously, ejects that unbearable feeling and projects it onto the closest, safest target available. And that's you.
And this is the absolute core of the whole thing. The abuser's accusation is basically an unwitting self-report. It's a confession in disguise. So when they scream, "You're so out of control," what they're really doing is reporting on their own internal state of feeling completely out of control. The whole point is to transfer that psychological weight. By making you the embodiment of their shame, their guilt, their insecurity, they get this momentary, powerful sense of relief. You become the flawed one, and they get to feel innocent again, morally superior, and totally in control.
So how does this shame transfer actually work? Well, it's not just a random thing that happens. It's a systematic, predictable, three-stage process. And honestly, understanding this process is the #1 most critical step to disarming it. So let's break it down.
Okay, steps 1, the internal threat. This is the trigger. It all starts inside the manipulator. They feel a flash of shame or guilt or inadequacy. Let's use insecurity as our example. For them, the thought, "I am insecure," isn't just some passing feeling. It's a critical threat to their entire identity. And since they can't tolerate or process that feeling, their psychological defense system just kicks into overdrive with one single mission: get this feeling out of me, now.
And that leads to step 2, the external transfer. This is the shame mirror itself. This is the moment that internal shame gets weaponized and launched. The manipulator takes that internal feeling and flips it outward, turning it into this intense, emotionally charged accusation. That internal thought, I am insecure, becomes the external attack. You are so insecure. Just look at you. That's the shame mirror in action. They're holding it up, but it's reflecting them, not you. And for the person on the receiving end, it's just total confusion and whiplash.
Then comes step 3, defense exploitation, or what I like to call the supply. And this is the truly insidious genius of the whole thing. Think about it. What's your natural, healthy response when you're falsely accused of something? You defend yourself, right? You say, that's not true, I'm not like that at all. You try to justify, argue, defend, explain. And that defense, that is exactly what the manipulator is waiting for. Boom, you've just walked right into their trap. All of your emotional energy, your focus, your desperate need to set the record straight, that becomes what's known as narcissistic supply. It feeds their ego, it validates their control, and it successfully shifts all the attention away from their original flaw. The transaction is complete, you're left totally exhausted, holding their shame, and they get to walk away feeling relieved, righteous, and powerful.
So, why is this pattern so devastatingly effective? It's because the manipulator and the target are playing completely different games. They're operating from two totally different psychological rulebooks, and because their goals are in direct opposition, it creates the perfect trap.
Let's just look at this contrast side by side, because it really shows why the trap works. On one side, you've got the manipulator, their driver, ego protection, their goal, impunity and control. Their action, they externalize shame. On the other side, you have the target, your driver, self-verification. You want the truth to line up. Your goal? To resolve that confusing dissonance, and your action? You often end up internalizing the blame. See the mismatch? The manipulator must get rid of their shame to feel safe. They want to avoid accountability at all costs. But you, the target, are driven by a healthy need for your reality to make sense. Your mind craves consistency and truth. So while they're throwing their shame outward, your natural reaction is to look inward and ask, wait, could it be me? Am I the one who's wrong here? And that fundamental difference, that's the vulnerability they exploit every single time.
Okay, we've gone through the problem, the definition, the whole mechanism. Now let's pivot to the most important part, the solution. How do you actually stop being their mirror? Well, it takes moving from just being aware of it to taking deliberate, strategic action. There are really 3 key steps to breaking this mirror. First, identify the accusation for what it is, a self-report. You have to consciously see their accusation not as a reflection of you, but as a confession about them. Second, use strategic non-engagement. That means you refuse to jade. We'll get to that in a second. And third, practice external anchoring and documentation. Basically, you gotta ground your reality.
Now here is a powerful, powerful tool. A simple sentence, that is your perception and I will not debate my reality with you. This is your antidote to that defense exploitation stage. It's how you refuse to jade. JADE stands for justify, argue, defend, or explain. And every single one of those is a trap. If you justify, you're giving them power. If you argue, you're giving them that supply they crave. If you defend, you're validating their accusation. And if you explain, you're just handing them more ammunition to use against you. But this sentence, it sidesteps all of that. Notice, it doesn't say you're wrong, which would just start a fight. It calmly and firmly draws a boundary. It says, you can think what you want, but I'm not going to let your perception define my reality. It just starves them of the energy they're looking for. This is literally the verbal equivalent of putting down the mirror.
Okay, so let's wrap all of this up with the most empowering takeaway here. The goal isn't to win the argument. It never was. The real goal is to simply refuse to be the mirror for someone else's shame.
So first, let's just lock this in. That false accusation, it's not about your flaw. It is the abuser's shame looking for a safe place to land. Identity projection is the shame mirror. That intense, painful accusation was never really about you. It was always a reflection of their own shame, their own guilt, just desperately looking for a home that wasn't them. And remember the loop. The external transfer of blame forces you into defense exploitation, right? Their blame shifting is designed to make you defend yourself. But your defense is the very thing that fuels them. It's a toxic, self-perpetuating cycle where your energy becomes their supply.
But you break the mirror, you shatter it. The moment you calmly refuse to accept the blame. The moment you see their accusation for what it is, a self-report, and you calmly refuse to engage, refuse to jade, you refuse to hold their shame for them.
And that is the moment of liberation.
Which leaves us with one final, empowering question. When you finally put down that mirror, when you refuse to reflect their distortions, you're finally free to see your own true reflection again. So, what will you see when you are no longer their mirror?